Unless you've been living under a rock, you couldn't have missed the fact that one of the biggest football YouTube content creators, MarkGoldbridge, recently sold his YouTube assets, ThatsFootball and the UnitedStand, to Gary Neville's The Overlap. And on the face of it, you might have some questions about, why's Mark done that? He's making a great career out of himself. But I don't want to talk about MarkGoldbridge. I want to talk about Gary Neville, because in the statement, as a part of the press release regarding the purchase of the Overlap's assets of MarkGoldbridge, one thing stood out to me, which I thought would be worth diving into a little bit further. And that's when Gary said that we are building what we believe will become one of the most exciting independent football communities in the world, one that gives fans direct, personality-led content. So that was Gary Neville announcing that after the fact the Overlap acquired MarkGoldbridge's YouTube channel assets. And the key word here, as you can see I've highlighted, is independent. And what I don't understand is what Gary is trying to do here, because it's not independent. And this is what we're going to dig into, because on the face of it, you might think, Gary started the Overlap on his YouTube channel to do alongside his regular work on Sky Sports. And that's probably, most people think that's that. But some of you that know Gary Neville in a bit more detail knows he's got a lot of other things going on outside of football. And for me, that's probably one of the things which, in my mind and in my opinion, has led to him becoming one of the worst pundits in football at the moment. He used to be the best when he first came onto Monday Night Football, and gradually he improved. I think he became the leading pundit in world football. Then Gary Neville came alongside Jamie Carragher, and once Carragher came on board, I think you can gradually see the difference between the two, as Neville has focused on his outside activities outside of football. So he's got a massive a development company in Manchester, building lots of buildings, taking over sites. He's got the hotel football. He's bought like restaurants and hotels in Manchester. He's doing loads of stuff, and that's all fine. There's no criticism there. It's just, I think it's noticeable when it comes to his football punditry is that he's clearly not watching any football anymore. Contrast that to Jamie Carragher, who is very well known reportedly to watch anything and all football, like Bundesliga, La Liga, anything that's going on. Carragher's consuming it, and you can see that when they talk about football. And there's been some famous clips here and there where Neville just said some ridiculous, outlandish things, which shows that he's not watched any football recently. And you can see the look on Carragher's face going, what the hell are you talking about? So these other business activities is what leads us into this next part of this process I want to talk about, and this is why this is quite an interesting comment that Neville's made, is when he's trying to portray this takeover of an independent YouTube channel owned by MarkGoldbridge into something it's not, because it's not independent whatsoever. And we're going to jump into that right now and dig into things a little bit further, because that's Football UnitedStand taken over by Gary Neville's The Overlap. And what irritates me when Gary portrays it the way he does is because it's just marketing nonsense, because it's nothing like independent. He's been bought out by something bigger, but it goes beyond simply The Overlap. And so that's the first instance, is The Overlap. And there's all the other strands of The Overlap, as you may have seen on the YouTube channels related to Gary Neville's The Overlap. There's the fan panels, there's the interviews, there's the weekly and multi-daily show that he does with Carragher, Jill Scott, Ian Wright and Roy Keane. After the fact that they've taken over That's Football and UnitedStand, they're going to kind of spin that off and have additional channels under the same kind of umbrella, which is Stick to United and Daily United. So really drilling down into the content game around Manchester United, and it's probably a decent time to jump into that world with United actually performing slightly better on the pitch, and with the constant drama off the pitch with the ownership. That's going to be going on and on. But what irked me most about Neville's comment regarding the fact that growing this independent voice in football is it's not independent at all. And some of you may not know what we're going to go into now, but this is why we're here. We're trying to learn a little bit more and get a bit more context, and ask the question, why are they portraying the things they're portraying the way they are? Obviously, it's just to kind of get you to continue watching and clicking through and listening to MarkGoldbridge, because you think, Mark's an independent voice, he's got nobody overseeing or controlling him, whereas the fact is it's a much, much bigger picture than that. obviously we've got the overlaps part of things, but did you know the overlap is actually not independent in itself whatsoever either? That is owned at least 50%, I think maybe slightly more, by another entity, and that is Global Media. And Global Media is a massive company, predominantly making a lot of its money and business in radio channels, commercial radio channels. So a lot of that is Capital FM, LBC, Radio X, Heart FM. This whole conglomerate of commercial radio channels all kind of falls under that umbrella. They also have a bunch of spin-off podcasts as well. The News Agents is one which is quite commonly heard and seen on YouTube, for example. So they make a lot of money in this area, and Global is just a huge company making a massive amount of money every year. It has an annual revenue of £898 million. So it is a massive company. And it's not just commercial radio that they have their hand in as well. They also have a massive portfolio of outdoor advertising spaces at prominent locations all across the UK and elsewhere. They also have a very advanced program around digital audio advertising. So DAX, which is very prominent in terms of securing advertising, a reach of 17 million. It's absolutely huge. It's the prominent radio advertiser. So if you're listening to commercial radio or you've listened to podcasts, then you'll probably hear an advert that's been placed there by DAX. Absolutely huge. And then if we go a step above Global, so we've got MarkGoldbridge, who sold his assets, YouTube channels, to the Overlap, which is owned by Global Media, which is absolutely massive, £898 million revenue a year. And they are themselves owned by a gentleman called Ashley Tabor King. Ashley Tabor King is the son of Michael Tabor, who has a net worth of over £800 million and has 100% ownership of Bet Victor, a prominent bookie in the UK, and who also owns a 33% holding within Coolmore, which is a very prominent horse stud company, so horse racing adjacent and all that sort of stuff, which generates $50 million per year on its own anyway. So at the tip of this tree, we have a billionaire or close to billionaire Michael Tabor, who has helped fund his son's business ventures, which then has a massive ownership that doesn't just go beyond radio. Has now been also buying assets in the YouTube world. So many of you may be aware of the Club, the Fellas podcast, Pitch Side. There's a whole bunch of YouTube and podcast assets that fall under the Fellas podcast network, which themselves were acquired by Global Media. So this is a massive company with a massive reach across YouTube, podcasts, commercial radio, and this whole notion about independence and everything else that Gary Neville is talking about when it comes to purchasing the MarkGoldbridge fan channels is basically complete nonsense. The word independent, it is not independent. They are part of a much bigger conglomerate, and it just irked me when he was trying to portray this as something it is definitely not, because they are part of a much bigger picture. And it's just interesting when you dig into these things, is when you start with a independent content creator legitimately in MarkGoldbridge, who created the UnitedStand and also ThatsFootball, and it's become something much bigger now as part of a smaller asset within a wider corporation that is Global Media. So if you hear someone say a quote in something related to this in the future, just consider what is actually going on here. There's a much bigger picture. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with any of this. It's just the annoying part for me is trying to portray this takeover and picking up of the assets of ThatsFootball and the UnitedStand as anything other than it's not. It's not an independent voice anymore. It's part of something much bigger.